The morning rain tapped against the windows of Memorial General Hospital as Lisa Chen walked through the familiar hallways one last time. 15 years of her life had been given to these walls. 15 years of night shifts, emergency calls, and countless lives touched by her caring hands. Lisa glanced at her watch, 9:15 a.m. The hospital administrator had asked to see her at 9:30. Probably just another meeting about staffing schedules, she thought. At 42, Lisa had become an expert at juggling the chaos of the emergency department. Her coworkers often joked that she could handle 3 critical patients while filling out paperwork and teaching new nurses all at the same time. The memory made her smile as she stopped to check on Mr. Parker in room 302. The elderly man had come in with pneumonia 3 days ago, and Lisa had been keeping a special eye on him. "How are we feeling today?" she asked, adjusting his oxygen tube. "Much better, dear," he replied with a weak smile. "Thanks to you." Lisa patted his hand. "Just doing my job. I'll stop by again before my shift ends." But Lisa would never get the chance to see Mr. Parker again. 20 minutes later, she sat across from the hospital administrator, a thin woman named Mrs. Patel, who couldn't quite meet Lisa's eyes. "I'm sorry to do this, especially to someone with your experience," Mrs. Patel said, sliding a white envelope across the desk. "The board finalized the budget cuts yesterday. Your department is losing 5 positions." Lisa stared at the envelope, not reaching for it. 5 positions? Out of how many? 12. Nearly half the nursing staff. Lisa's heart pounded in her chest. "And I'm one of the 5? I've been here 15 years. Unfortunately, your position comes with a higher salary due to your seniority. They can hire 2 new graduates for what we pay you." Mrs. Patel finally looked up. "It's nothing personal. It's just numbers on a spreadsheet to them." Lisa's hands trembled slightly as she finally took the envelope. Inside was a termination notice, effective immediately, along with information about her final paycheck and continuation of benefits. 2 weeks of severance pay for 15 years of service. "Can I at least finish my shift? Say goodbye to my patients." Mrs. Patel shook her head. "Security will escort you to clean out your locker. It's standard procedure." Standard procedure. As if there was anything standard about having your life's work reduced to a budget line item. The walk to the locker room felt like moving through a dream. Nurses and doctors nodded hello, unaware that Lisa wouldn't be there tomorrow. A security guard waited discreetly by the door, scrolling through his phone. Lisa opened her locker and began emptying it mechanically. Photos of her nephew's graduation, a spare set of scrubs. The coffee mug her mother had given her when she first got hired. Each item felt heavier than the last as she placed them in a cardboard box. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Did you pick up my prescription?" Lisa closed her eyes. Her mother's medication had recently doubled in price. Without insurance, it would cost nearly $300 a month. And now, without a job. "I need to finish by 10:30, the security guard said, not unkindly. "Almost done," Lisa replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Outside, the rain had stopped, but dark clouds still hung overhead. Lisa placed the box in her car, a 10-year-old Honda with 175,000 miles on it. The car payment was due next week, the rent the week after that. She sat behind the wheel but didn't start the engine. What now? Hospitals everywhere were cutting staff. At her age, with her experience, she was overqualified for many positions but lacking recent training for others. Lisa took a deep breath and finally turned the key. She had $2,400 in savings, maybe enough for 2 months if she was careful. She'd start applying for jobs right away. Something would turn up. It had to. As she pulled out of the parking lot for the last time, Lisa never imagined that in just 24 hours, her entire life would change in ways she couldn't possibly predict. The next morning, Lisa woke up with that brief moment of peace before remembering she no longer had a job to go to. Her apartment felt unusually quiet without the rushed routine of getting ready for her shift. She made coffee and opened her laptop, determined to start her job search right away. 3 hours and 4 online applications later, Lisa's eyes burned from staring at the screen. Each application asked the same questions, and each one felt like shouting into an empty room. Would anyone even read them? The rejection emails from automated systems had already started appearing in her inbox. "You need a break," she muttered to herself, closing the laptop. Lisa grabbed her purse and headed out. The spring air felt fresh against her face as she walked 3 blocks to the Morning Light Cafe. She rarely had time to visit local businesses during normal hours, always working when most people were enjoying their day. The cafe was a small place with big windows and the smell of fresh pastries in the air. The bell jingled as she pushed open the door. Only a few customers sat scattered around. A young couple in the corner, an older woman reading a newspaper, and a well-dressed older man sitting alone by the window. He wore an expensive-looking gray suit that seemed slightly too formal for a neighborhood cafe. Lisa ordered a simple black coffee and found a quiet table where she could gather her thoughts. What if she couldn't find another nursing position? Should she consider moving to a different city? The question swirled in her mind as she sipped her coffee. A crush suddenly broke through her thoughts. The man in the gray suit had stood up abruptly, knocking over his coffee cup. His face was twisted in pain, one hand clutching his chest, the other desperately reaching for support. Before anyone else could react, his knees buckled. Lisa was on her feet instantly. 15 years of emergency room training kicked in without a second thought. She rushed across the cafe as the man collapsed to the floor. "Sir, can you hear me?" Lisa knelt beside him, her voice clear and steady despite the adrenaline surging through her body. His eyes were wide with fear, his breathing labored. "Can't breathe," he gasped. Lisa placed her fingers against his neck, feeling for a pulse. It was there, but irregular and racing. The signs were unmistakable to her trained eye. This wasn't just a fall or a dizzy spell. "Someone call 911. She called out to the stunned cafe patrons. "Tell them possible cardiac event, male, approximately 65 years old." The young barista behind the counter fumbled for a phone, while Lisa loosened the man's tie and collar. "I'm a nurse," she told him calmly, though she felt a pang at using the present tense. "I'm going to help you. Try to take slow breaths if you can." The man's eyes locked with hers, filled with a desperate plea for help. His skin had taken on a grayish tone, and his breathing became more labored by the second. "Do you have any medications you take? For your heart?" Lisa asked, keeping her voice calm and clear. He tried to speak but couldn't form the words. Instead, he weakly pointed to his jacket pocket. Lisa carefully reached inside and found a small pill bottle. "Nitroglycerin," she read aloud. "Good, this will help." With practiced hands, she placed one of the tiny pills under his tongue. The cafe owner had appeared with a glass of water and a small first aid kit. "Thank you," Lisa said, taking the kit. "What's your name, sir?" she asked the man, trying to keep him conscious and focused. "Richard," he managed to whisper. "Richard Taylor." "Okay, Mr. Taylor. The ambulance is on its way. I'm going to stay right here with you." She placed a folded napkin under his head and checked his pulse again. It was growing weaker, and his breathing more shallow. A chill ran down Lisa's spine. She recognized when a situation was escalating from serious to critical. The man suddenly gripped her hand with surprising strength. "Please," he whispered. "Don't leave." "I'm not going anywhere," Lisa promised, squeezing his hand back. "Just stay with me." In that moment, all thoughts of her job loss and uncertain future vanished. There was only this man who needed her help and the skills she'd spent a lifetime perfecting. Lisa didn't know it yet, but this chance encounter was about to change everything. The nitroglycerin pill didn't seem to be helping. Richard's breathing grew more labored, and Lisa noticed a bluish tint appearing around his lips. Not a good sign. "Where's that ambulance?" she called out, her voice steady but urgent. "They said 5 minutes," the barista replied, peeking nervously through the cafe window. Lisa knew that 5 minutes could be too long. Richard's pulse was weakening under her fingertips, and his eyes were beginning to lose focus. "Listen to me, Mr. Taylor," she said firmly, squeezing his hand. "You need to fight. The ambulance is coming, but I need you to stay with me." He tried to nod, but suddenly his body went rigid. Then, without warning, he stopped breathing entirely. "He's coding," Lisa announced, immediately shifting into emergency mode. "I need space. Someone help me lay him flat." The cafe owner rushed over, helping Lisa position Richard properly on the floor. She tilted his head back, checked his airway, and found no pulse. Starting CPR, she announced, more to herself than anyone else. Lisa positioned her hands on Richard's chest and began compressions, deep, rhythmic pushes that she hoped would keep blood flowing to his brain until help arrived. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted silently, maintaining the precise tempo she'd used countless times before. "Does anyone know CPR who can help me?" she called out between breaths. The cafe had gone eerily quiet. Customers stood frozen, watching the drama unfold. Nobody stepped forward. "It's okay," Lisa said, not breaking her rhythm. "Just someone watch the door for the paramedics." Sweat beaded on her forehead as she continued the exhausting process. 30 compressions, then 2 rescue breaths. The cycle continued as seconds stretched into minutes. Her arms began to ache, but she couldn't stop. Every moment without oxygen meant brain damage or worse. "Come on, Richard," she whispered during a breath. "Don't give up now." 7 minutes passed. Lisa's muscles screamed in protest, but she refused to slow down. In the hospital, she would have had relief by now, another nurse to take over compressions, a doctor with a defibrillator, medication to restart the heart. Here, it was just her, fighting death with nothing but determination and skill. "I can hear the sirens." Someone called from the door. Relief flooded through Lisa, but she didn't pause the compressions. "Tell them cardiac arrest, CPR in progress, approximately 9 minutes downtime." The sirens grew louder, and suddenly the cafe door burst open. 2 paramedics rushed in, equipment in hand. "I'm a registered nurse," Lisa explained quickly as they knelt beside her. "He collapsed about 10 minutes ago. Complained of chest pain, then lost consciousness. I found nitroglycerin in his pocket, administered 1 tablet. He's been without pulse for about 9 minutes. I've been doing continuous CPR." The paramedics nodded, immediately unpacking the defibrillator. "We'll take it from here. Good work." But Lisa didn't step back. "His name is Richard Taylor." He was responsive initially. One paramedic attached the AED pads to Richard's chest while the other prepared an IV line. "Clear," he called, and Lisa finally moved away. Richard's body jerked as the electrical current passed through him. The paramedics checked for a pulse. Nothing. Continuing CPR. Lisa watched, her own heart pounding as they worked. More paramedics arrived with a stretcher and additional equipment. They administered epinephrine, shocked him again, and finally, "We've got a rhythm." The words sent a wave of relief through the cafe. A tentative pulse had returned. It was weak, but it was there. "You kept him alive," one of the paramedics told Lisa as they prepared to transport Richard. 18 minutes without proper medical equipment, that's incredible. Most people wouldn't have made it. Lisa nodded, suddenly aware of how exhausted she felt. Her arms ached and her uniform, the clothes she'd worn for job hunting, was stained with sweat. As they wheeled Richard toward the ambulance, his eyelids fluttered slightly. He wasn't conscious, but he was fighting. "Can I come with him?" Lisa asked impulsively. The paramedic hesitated. "Are you family?" "No. But—" "I'm sorry, family only. But you can follow us to Memorial General if you want. They'll be taking him to the cardiac unit." Lisa smiled sadly at the irony. Less than 24 hours after being escorted out of that hospital, she'd be walking back in, not as an employee, but as the person who had just saved a stranger's life. "Will he make it?" she asked quietly as they loaded Richard into the ambulance. The paramedic's face was serious. "Thanks to you, he's got a fighting chance. That's more than most get in his situation." As the ambulance doors closed, Lisa stood in the morning sunlight, wondering what twist of fate had brought her to this cafe on this particular morning. She had no idea that Richard Taylor was far more than just another patient, and that her life was about to change forever. Lisa stood in the cafe parking lot, watching as the ambulance pulled away with sirens blaring. Her hands were still trembling slightly, the adrenaline from the past 20 minutes slowly beginning to fade. Around her, the cafe patrons who had witnessed everything were speaking in hushed, excited tones. "That was amazing," the young barista said, approaching Lisa with a paper cup. "I brought you some fresh coffee, on the house, of course." Lisa accepted the cup gratefully, certainly aware of how dry her throat felt. "Thank you." "Are you really a nurse?" asked an elderly woman who had been sitting near the window. "Yes," Lisa replied, then corrected herself. Well, I was until yesterday. Budget cuts at Memorial General. The cafe owner stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. Whatever hospital let you go made a terrible mistake. What you did today, not everyone could have done that. Lisa took a deep breath. Anyone with proper training would have done the same. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. Emergency response required more than training. It required instinct, courage, and the ability to stay calm when everything was falling apart. "Will you go to the hospital to check on him?" the cafe owner asked. Lisa hesitated. She hadn't planned to follow the ambulance. What was Richard Taylor to her, after all? Just a stranger she'd helped in a crisis, and yet she couldn't deny feeling invested in his recovery. "I think I will," she decided, just to make sure he's okay. The drive to Memorial General felt surreal. Just yesterday, she'd left this place thinking she might never return. Now here she was, pulling into the visitor parking lot instead of her usual staff spot. Walking through the sliding doors of the emergency entrance, Lisa felt a strange combination of familiarity and distance. This had been her second home for 15 years. Now she was just another visitor. At the reception desk, a nurse Lisa didn't recognize looked up from her computer. "Can I help you?" "I'm inquiring about a patient who was just brought in by ambulance." "Richard Taylor? Cardiac arrest at the Morning Light Cafe." The receptionist typed something into her computer. "Are you family?" "No, I was the one who performed CPR until the paramedics arrived." The receptionist's eyes widened slightly. "Oh, you're the nurse who saved him. They're talking about you upstairs." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "He's in the cardiac ICU. 3rd floor. Dr. Patel is attending." Lisa thanked her and headed for the elevators, surprised to be recognized. In the hospital, codes happened every day. What made this one special? The cardiac ICU was quiet compared to the emergency department. Lisa approached the nurse's station, where a familiar face brightened in recognition. "Lisa, what are you doing here?" "I thought yesterday was your last day." It was Nancy, one of her former colleagues. Lisa explained the situation quickly. "That was you?" Nancy's eyes widened. "Lisa, do you have any idea who that man is?" "Richard Taylor? No, should I?" Nancy glanced around and lowered her voice. "That's Richard Taylor, as in Taylor Enterprises. He owns half the commercial real estate downtown, including the building this hospital leases. And he's on the hospital board." Lisa felt her stomach drop. The man whose life she'd saved was on the board that had probably approved her department's budget cuts. "How is he doing?" she asked, pushing aside that uncomfortable realization. Touch and go. They took him straight to surgery for an emergency bypass. The doctor said if CPR hadn't been started immediately, he wouldn't have made it to the hospital alive. Lisa nodded, processing this information. "I should go. I just wanted to make sure he was okay." "Wait," Nancy said, grabbing a notepad. "Leave your number. His family is here, and I'm sure they'll want to thank you when things settle down." Lisa hesitated, then scribbled her phone number down. What harm could it do? As she walked back to her car, her phone buzzed with a text message from a recruiter she'd contacted that morning. "No nursing positions available at this time." Lisa sighed, sliding into the driver's seat. She'd saved a man's life today, a wealthy, powerful man, but nothing had really changed. She was still unemployed, still worried about making rent. One good deed didn't fix a broken system. She had no way of knowing that across town, in a luxurious office building, an executive assistant was making an urgent call to the manager of a high-end automobile dealership with very specific instructions about 4 vehicles that needed to be prepared for delivery. And she certainly couldn't have guessed that in less than 24 hours, those same vehicles would be parked outside her modest apartment building, waiting to change her life forever. Lisa woke up early the next morning, despite having no job to go to. Old habits were hard to break after 15 years of hospital shifts. She made coffee and checked her phone. 3 more automated rejection emails from hospitals and clinics where she'd applied yesterday. With a sigh, she opened her laptop and began searching for more job openings. Maybe she needed to look beyond nursing. The thought made her stomach twist. Nursing wasn't just what she did, it was who she was. Her phone rang, displaying an unknown number. "Hello," she answered cautiously. "Is this Lisa Chen?" a professional-sounding woman asked. Yes, speaking. My name is Patricia Williams, executive assistant to Richard Taylor. Mr. Taylor's family would like to speak with you regarding yesterday's events. Would you be available to meet them at Memorial General this afternoon? Lisa's heart skipped a beat. Is Mr. Taylor, is he okay? He's recovering from surgery, but the doctors are optimistic. His family is very eager to thank you in person. Of course, Lisa replied. What time should I come? Would 2 p.m. work for you? I can have a car sent to pick you up. That's not necessary, Lisa began, but Patricia interrupted politely. Mr. Taylor's family insists. The driver will arrive at 1:30. After hanging up, Lisa stood in her kitchen, feeling strangely anxious. Why would the family send a car? She had only done what any healthcare worker would do. Still, she changed into her nicest blouse and slacks, the outfit she reserved for job interviews. At precisely 1:30, her doorbell rang. Lisa expected a regular taxi, but instead found a uniformed driver standing beside a sleek Blacktown car. Ms. Chen, he asked with a polite smile. I'm here to take you to Memorial General. The luxury car felt out of place in her modest neighborhood. Lisa slid into the soft leather backseat, suddenly aware of how different this was from her usual bus ride. Mr. Taylor's family is very excited to meet you, the driver commented as they pulled away from the curb. I'm not sure why, Lisa replied honestly. I just happened to be there when he needed help. The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. From what I heard, you did a lot more than just happen to be there. 18 minutes of CPR isn't just happening to be there. News traveled fast, apparently. Lisa fell silent, watching the familiar city streets pass by. They arrived at the hospital's main entrance rather than the emergency department she visited yesterday. The driver escorted her through the lobby and up to the private rooms on the 4th floor. Outside one of the largest rooms stood a small group of well-dressed people speaking quietly among themselves. When they spotted Lisa, a tall woman with elegant gray hair stepped forward. Ms. Chen, I'm Catherine Taylor, Richard's wife. We can't thank you enough for what you did. Her eyes were red-rimmed but sincere. Lisa shook her hand. I'm just glad I was there to help. How is your husband doing? Much better, Catherine replied, leading Lisa into the room. The doctors say if you hadn't started CPR immediately, he wouldn't have survived long enough for surgery. The hospital room hardly looked like the ones Lisa was accustomed to. Fresh flowers filled every surface, and a large window offered a view of the city. In the center, Richard Taylor lay propped up against pillows, looking pale but alert. His face brightened when he saw Lisa. There she is, he said, his voice weak but clear. My guardian angel. Lisa felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. I'm no angel, Mr. Taylor. Just a nurse doing her job. Former nurse, I hear, he replied, surprising her. Catherine told me what you said at the cafe. Budget cuts at Memorial General. Lisa nodded uncomfortably. She hadn't come here to discuss her employment situation. Terrible decision, Richard continued, shaking his head. Absolutely terrible. Do you know I've been on the hospital board for 20 years? I didn't until yesterday, Lisa admitted. Richard's eyes narrowed. Well, I've been out of commission for board meetings lately. Health issues. He gestured vaguely at his chest. But I certainly never approved cutting experienced nurses. A younger man stepped forward, Richard's son by the resemblance. Dad, you need to rest. We can discuss hospital staffing another time. Richard waved him off. Lisa, my family wants to thank you properly for saving my life. That's really not necessary, Lisa began. It is absolutely necessary, Catherine interrupted gently. We've arranged a small token of our appreciation. It's waiting at your apartment right now. Lisa's confusion must have shown on her face because Richard's son smiled. Don't worry, it's nothing intrusive, just a way for us to express our gratitude. As if on cue, Patricia appeared at the doorway. Ms. Chen, whenever you're ready, the driver can take you home to see. Lisa looked from one Taylor to the next, bewildered by their mysterious smiles. What kind of token required her to go home to see it? She had no idea that she was about to discover exactly what kind of gratitude a billionaire's family could express, in the form of 4 gleaming luxury vehicles parked outside her apartment building, drawing a crowd of amazed neighbors. The town car turned onto Lisa's street, and she immediately noticed something unusual. A small crowd had gathered in front of her apartment building, people pointing and taking pictures with their phones. As they drew closer, Lisa's mouth fell open in shock. Parked in a neat row along the curb were 4 gleaming luxury vehicles: a sleek silver Mercedes, a midnight blue BMW, a stately black Bentley, and a white Range Rover. Each one looked brand new, the sun glinting off their polished surfaces. "What's going on?" Lisa asked the driver, who simply smiled in response. "Mr. Taylor's family asked me to bring you home to see your gift," he explained, pulling up behind the Range Rover. These can't be for me," Lisa stammered as the driver opened her door. Her neighbor Mrs. Pham rushed over as Lisa stepped out of the town car. "Lisa, are these yours? There was a delivery man with papers asking for you." Indeed, standing beside the Bentley was a man in a crisp suit holding a clipboard. He approached Lisa with a professional smile. "Ms. Chen, I'm David from Taylor Motors. I've been waiting for you." He gestured toward the 4 vehicles. "Mr. Taylor asked us to bring these options for you to consider." Lisa stared at him, then at the cars, then back at him. "Options?" "Yes, ma'am. You're to choose one as a gift from the Taylor family." A small crowd of neighbors had gathered around, watching the exchange with undisguised curiosity. Lisa felt her cheeks burning with embarrassment and confusion. "There must be some mistake," she said quietly to David. "I can't accept something like this." David smiled patiently. "Mr. Taylor was very clear about his instructions. He said to tell you that this is non-negotiable." He handed her an envelope. "He also asked me to give you this." With trembling fingers, Lisa opened the envelope and unfolded a handwritten note. "Dear Lisa, When a person saves your life, a simple thank you seems woefully inadequate. You gave me the most precious gift possible, more time with my family, more years to enjoy this world. Nothing can repay that, but I hope you'll accept one of these vehicles as a token of my gratitude. The choice is yours. Take whichever one speaks to you. With eternal thanks. Richard Taylor. Lisa read the note twice, her heart pounding. This couldn't be real. People didn't just give away luxury cars worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. "I don't know what to say," she told David, who waited patiently. "Would you like to look at them more closely?" he offered. In a daze, Lisa walked along a row of vehicles. Each one probably cost more than she made in several years. The Mercedes was sleek and elegant, the BMW sporty and powerful, the Bentley the epitome of luxury. When she reached the Range Rover, Lisa paused. Unlike the others, this one seemed practical despite its luxury. Higher off the ground, sturdy with plenty of space. She thought about winter snowstorms, about rushing to help someone in an emergency, about visiting her mother on the outskirts of town where the roads weren't always well maintained. "Can I really just choose one?" she asked David, still disbelieving. "Absolutely." Mr. Taylor was quite clear. "Once you decide, I'll handle all the paperwork. Tax, title, insurance, everything's been taken care of for the first year." Lisa's neighbor Mrs. Pham whispered not so quietly, "Take the Bentley, it's the most expensive." But Lisa found herself drawn to the Range Rover. "This one," she said finally, running her hand along its smooth white surface. "It's the most practical." David nodded approvingly. "An excellent choice. Mr. Taylor thought you might select this one." He opened the driver's door, revealing a luxurious leather interior. "Would you like to sit inside?" Lisa slid into the driver's seat, her hands gripping the steering wheel in disbelief. The new car smell filled her nostrils as she tried to process what was happening. Just 2 days ago, she'd lost her job. Now she was sitting in a brand new luxury SUV that somehow belonged to her. David handed her another envelope through the window. "The keys and ownership papers are all in here. And one more thing, Mr. Taylor asked me to give you this." Inside was a business card that read, "Patricia Williams, Executive Assistant to Richard Taylor," with a handwritten note on the back, "Please call tomorrow at 10 a.m. Mr. Taylor would like to discuss a job opportunity." Lisa stared at the card as tears welled in her eyes. A car was an incredible gift, but the possibility of a new job, that was priceless. Her phone buzzed with a text from Catherine Taylor. "The car is just the beginning." Richard never does anything halfway. Welcome to the family. 2 years later, Lisa pulled her white Range Rover into the parking lot of a modern glass building with Taylor Emergency Response Training Center displayed prominently on the front. The lot was already filling with cars as students arrived for morning classes. Lisa smiled as she grabbed her coffee and briefcase. So much had changed since that life-altering day when she performed CPR in a small cafe. The morning after receiving her new car, Lisa had called Patricia Williams as instructed. She expected a job offer, perhaps as Richard's private nurse during his recovery. What she hadn't expected was for Richard himself to take the call from his hospital bed. "Lisa," he'd said, his voice stronger than the day before, "how do you feel about teaching?" That question had changed everything. Richard explained that during his recovery, he'd realized how lucky he'd been that someone with Lisa's training happened to be nearby when his heart failed. Most people weren't so fortunate. "I want to build a training center," he'd told her, "not just for medical professionals, but for everyone. Teachers, office workers, bus drivers. Anyone could find themselves in a situation where they need to save a life." Richard had offered Lisa the position of head of nursing and training development with a salary that made her gasp. At first, she thought he was just feeling grateful that the offer might disappear once he fully recovered. But Richard Taylor wasn't a man who made empty promises. Within 6 months, the Taylor Emergency Response Training Center opened its doors. Under Lisa's guidance, they developed programs for every skill level, from basic first aid for school children to advanced cardiac support for healthcare professionals. Now, walking through the center's busy hallways, Lisa greeted the staff with warm familiarity. The building hummed with activity, medical students practicing intubation in one room, a group of flight attendants learning emergency protocols in another, community volunteers mastering CPR techniques in the largest training room. Lisa's office overlooked the main training floor. On her desk sat a framed photo of her and Richard at the center's grand opening, Richard looking healthy and vibrant just months after his near-death experience. Next to it was a newspaper clipping with the headline, "Local Training Center credited with 37 lives saved in first year." Her assistant poked her head in the door. "Morning, Lisa. The school bus drivers are here for their refresher course." And Richard called. "He's bringing some hospital board members by this afternoon." "Thanks, May. I'll be ready." Lisa checked her schedule on the computer. Today, she would personally teach a course for teachers from low-income schools, fully funded by the Taylor Foundation. Teaching had become her passion, passing on the knowledge that had saved Richard's life that day. Around lunchtime, Lisa stepped outside for some fresh air. Across the street, a local news crew was interviewing a young woman who looked vaguely familiar. "Can you tell us what happened?" the reporter asked. "I was just having lunch when this man collapsed," the woman explained. "I remembered the training I got at the Taylor Center last month. I started chest compressions right away and kept going until the ambulance came." Lisa smiled. Another life saved. Another family spared the grief of sudden loss. Later that afternoon, Richard arrived with the hospital board members, including Mrs. Patel, the same administrator who had handed Lisa her termination notice 2 years ago. "And this is the woman who made it all possible," Richard announced proudly, introducing Lisa to the group. Mrs. Patel looked slightly uncomfortable. "We've met before," she said quietly. Lisa just smiled and extended her hand. "It's good to see you again." After the tour, Richard lingered behind. At 67, he looked healthier than he had before his heart attack, exercising regularly and taking better care of himself. "Nearly 1,000 people trained this month," he said, reviewing the statistics. "That's 1,000 potential lifesavers out there." "All because you had the vision to build this place," Lisa replied. Richard shook his head. "No, Lisa. All because you were the right person, with the right skills, in the right place at the right time. And because you didn't give up on a stranger even when your own life was falling apart." As they walked toward the entrance, a class was letting out, ordinary people who now had the power to save lives. "Remember when I sent those 4 cars to your apartment?" Richard asked with a chuckle. "Catherine thought I was being excessive." Lisa laughed. It was quite a shock. "Do you ever regret choosing the Range Rover? The Bentley was worth twice as much." Lisa thought about the countless snowstorms she'd driven through to reach the center, the medical supplies she'd transported, the elderly neighbors she'd helped during bad weather. "Never," she said honestly. "I chose exactly what I needed." Just like Richard had chosen exactly the right person to build his legacy, someone who understood that saving lives wasn't just about technical skills, but about courage, persistence, and being ready when opportunity appeared. As Lisa watched another group of students arrive for evening classes, she realized that losing her job had been the first step on a path she never could have imagined. Sometimes life's worst moments led to its greatest gifts.